Listen, everybody. In the village of Ndiagu, there was a woman who knew your secret before you even knew it yourself. Not the pastor, not the village head, not the oldest grandmother who had lived long enough to remember when the big mango tree at the market square was still a small stick in the ground. No, it was the fish seller. Mama Titi, fish seller, market woman, mother of 6 grown children, and the greatest unsolved mystery the village of Ndiagu had carried for 22 years. She would look at a woman walking toward her store, tilt her head slightly to the left, squint her eyes the way somebody squints when they are reading a sign from far away, and then, quietly, almost to herself, she would say, "This one is carrying." And 9 months later, baby would arrive, crying, healthy, right on schedule, every single time. Now, Ndiagu was not a large city where you could disappear into a crowd. This was the kind of village where if you sneezed at 7 in the morning, 3 people had already said, "God bless you," before you finished the sneeze. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody's business was the community's business. And in a place like this, a woman who could detect pregnancy before the husband, before the doctor, before the woman herself had properly accepted the news, that kind of woman was either a miracle or a problem, depending on which side of her stall you were standing. The village had been trying to explain Mama Titi for 2 decades. The first theory was that she had a special gift from God. The older women at the White Garment Church on the hill said Mama Titi had the spirit of discernment. They invited her to pray with them 3 times. She declined 3 times, politely, and went back to selling her catfish. The second theory came from a man named Elder Boniface, who was suspicious of anything he could not explain with his standard 6 education. He said Mama Titi was using something from somewhere. He had not bought fish from her stall in 11 years. He bought his own fish from a young boy named Kelvin who sold near the borehole. But even Kelvin had once heard Mama Titi say, "Morning water, not cold water," to a woman, and reported back 6 months later that the woman delivered twins. Elder Boniface bought his own fish after that, from his own pond. He was not taking any chances. The third theory, held by younger people who had gone to university and returned with big grammar, was that it was psychology, observation, pattern recognition. Everyone would nod politely at this explanation and then go home still believing it was juju. Because Mama Titi was not just right. She was right in cases where nobody, not even the woman's own mother, had any reason to suspect anything. She had detected pregnancies at 3 weeks gone when the woman was still eating pepper soup with full appetite and wearing her fitted dresses. She had detected one when the woman herself was certain nothing could have happened because she and her husband had been quarreling for 6 weeks straight. These stories traveled, they grew, they collected new details with each telling, the way village stories always do. But the heart of every version was always the same. Mama Titi knew. She always knew, and she was never wrong. Women who were trying to conceive had started timing their market visits carefully, coming to Mama Titi's stall in the weeks when they hoped something had happened, watching her face for any sign of the tilt, the squint, the quiet that meant everything. One woman named Mama Josephine came to the market 7 Tuesdays in a row buying fish she did not need, just waiting. On the 8th Tuesday, Mama Titi looked at her and said, God has answered. Mama Josephine had not even done a test yet. She went home and did 3. All 3 agreed with Mama Titi. So this was the Ndiagu that Sandra was living in. On that Tuesday morning in the dry season, when she woke up, looked at the test results she had kept folded inside her Bible for 2 days, and decided to go to the market early to buy catfish before the crowd arrived. Sandra was 26 years old, married to Emeka for 14 months. She was the kind of woman who planned everything carefully. Her wedding, her first year of marriage, and now this. She was going to cook ofe onubu with pounded yam, set the table in the sitting room, light the small candle she had bought 2 months ago, let Emeka eat, then say, "I need to tell you something," and watch his face open slowly like a window pushed wide from inside. She had this planned, she had it organized. What she had not planned was Mama Titi. Mama Titi was 61 years old and had not slept past 5 in the morning since 2009. So she had long since decided that if she was going to be awake that early, she might as well be at work. She was seated on her low wooden bench behind a wide tray of fresh catfish, iced croaker, smoked tilapia, and dried stockfish standing upright at the back like soldiers. She was fanning herself with a folded piece of newspaper. Her hand fanned automatically, like breathing. She looked up when Sandra approached. And there it was, that tilt, that small shift of the head to the left, those eyes going just slightly narrower. Sandra did not see it. She was already composing her greeting. "Good morning, Mama Titi." "My daughter, good morning. You came early today." "Yes, ma. I want to prepare soup. Catfish or croaker?" "Catfish, please. 3 medium ones." Mama Titi began selecting the fish, pressing gently at the sides, holding each one up to check the eye, because a fresh fish has a clear, bright eye, and a fish that is trying to deceive you has a cloudy one, same as certain humans. She was quiet as she walked. That was one of the things about Mama Titi. She did not fill silence with noise. She let silence sit, and in that silence, she was watching. After a moment, she said, "How is your body?" "I am fine, ma. Body is good." "You are sleeping well?" "Yes, ma." "Eating well?" Sandra paused just slightly before answering. Just slightly. "Yes, ma." Mama Titi said, She wrapped the fish, collected 800 naira, and handed it over. As Sandra turned to leave, Mama Titi said, casually, lightly, "Take care of yourself, my daughter, and drink plenty of water. Morning water, not cold water." Sandra stopped. She stood completely still for 3 seconds. Then she turned around slowly. "Why do you say that, ma?" Mama Titi looked up with the peaceful expression of a woman who had said nothing unusual. "Dry season is upon us. Everybody should be drinking water. The heat is coming." She picked up her newspaper and began fanning again. Sandra stood there with her mouth slightly open. Her brain was doing fast calculations. Was that a general water comment, or was that the water comment? Because there was a significant, life-altering difference between the two, and Mama Titi's face was giving absolutely nothing away. "Okay, ma. Thank you, ma." "Greet your husband," Mama Titi said, without looking up. Sandra walked away. She was calm, completely calm. She was calm until she passed the tomato sellers and turned the corner, and then she walked very fast, the kind of fast that is 1 step away from running, but you are in a wrapper and you do not want to cause a scene. By the time she reached the compound gate, her heart was doing things that seemed excessive for a person simply carrying catfish home. She entered the kitchen, set the fish on the counter, sat on her small stool, and held her head in her 2 hands. She had not told anybody, not her mother in Enugu, not her mother-in-law 6 compounds away, not her best friend Chioma, not even Vicky, her own sister who lived in the same compound, shared the same courtyard, and sometimes finished Sandra's sentences before Sandra had decided how they were going to end. She had not told Vicky. But now she heard Vicky's slippers coming across the courtyard, that flat slap sound that meant Vicky was heading to the kitchen looking for something she could not find in her own kitchen, which happened about 4 mornings out of 7. The door opened. Vicky came in looking for the kitchen knife. She saw Sandra sitting on the stool holding her own head and stopped. "What happened to you? You look like you saw a masquerade in the market." Sandra looked up slowly. "Vicky, did you tell anybody anything about me?" "Tell who? Tell what?" "Sandra, it is 7 in the morning. I have not spoken to any human being today. What is happening?"
Sandra said slowly. Mama Titi told me to drink morning water, not cold water. Vicky's face changed completely. The knife mission ended immediately. She pulled a stool and sat directly in front of her sister, the way a person sits when they are about to receive important information and they do not want their body to be unprepared. Sandra, she said. What? Mama Titi said morning water, not cold water, to you. That is what I just said. Vicky put her hand over her mouth. She was quiet for 5 full seconds, which for Vicky was the equivalent of 1 hour of silence for a normal human being. Then she removed her hand. Ada, is there something you are not telling me?
And here is where Sandra made the mistake every person who has ever tried to keep a secret in a small village eventually makes. She waited too long before saying no. Just 3 seconds of silence, 3 seconds of looking at her sister's face and calculating. And in those 3 seconds, Vicky read everything. Sandra! Vicky, keep your voice down. Sandra, oh! When? How many weeks? Does Emeka know? I am your sister, the one who... Vicky. Sandra grabbed both her hands. I was going to tell Emeka tonight, with the candle, with the good food. That was the plan. Please, do not open your mouth to any living person until I have spoken to my husband. I am begging you. Vicky nodded with complete sincerity. My mouth is locked. The key has been thrown away. Sandra, you know me. I know you, Sandra said. That is why I am begging. Vicky lasted 40 minutes. She went to borrow crayfish from their neighbor, Mrs. Uche, a pleasant 40-year-old woman who sold provisions and always had information to share along with the goods. Mrs. Uche measured out the crayfish. Then she looked at Vicky's face. You look like somebody holding gist. What happened? Vicky said, nothing happened. Mrs. Uche looked at her. Vicky lasted 11 more seconds. Mrs. Uche, she said, grabbing the woman's arm, I am going to tell you something, and it must stay exactly here between you and I. Seal it. Mrs. Uche sealed it immediately. She was ready. Vicky leaned forward and whispered. Mrs. Uche's eyes went wide. Mama Titi detected her this morning. That is how we know. Mrs. Uche shook her head slowly. That woman will not let anybody keep anything. Is she even a human being? They talked for 12 more minutes. Vicky went back to her kitchen feeling lighter and slightly guilty about feeling lighter. Mrs. Uche waited 4 minutes. Then she called her sister Amaka on the other side of the market road, strictly in confidence. Amaka told her husband Ifeanyi over breakfast because they were a very open couple. Ifeanyi mentioned it casually at the office during the 10 o'clock tea break to a colleague named Chukudera who happened to be a long-time friend of Emeka. Chukudera picked up his phone. Emeka was standing at a petrol station near his school during lunch break, waiting for his car to fill up, thinking about a student disciplinary matter when his phone rang. Emeka, my man, how body? Body day? What is happening? I just want to confirm something. I heard Mama Titi spoke to your wife in the market this morning. Every man in Ndiagu whose wife had visited the market knew what those words meant. Emeka, Chukudera, who told you this? You know how gist travels, but is it true? I don't know, Emeka said quietly, because my wife has not told me anything. Short pause. Then Chukudera said, oh, then, then, well, congratulations if it is true. Emeka paid for his fuel, got into the car, sat behind the wheel without starting the engine for 90 seconds, staring at nothing. His wife had news. The whole village knew. His colleague called him at a petrol station, and the man had not even been told directly. It had passed through 4 people to reach him. He drove back to school, handled the disciplinary matter, taught 1 class, signed 3 letters, did all of it on the outside, while on the inside he was replaying the situation very thoroughly. He did not call Sandra. He did not send a message. When school ended, he drove home in complete silence, entered the compound, went straight to his chair, the big one near the window that was understood to be his, the way a throne belongs to whoever sits on it regularly. He sat down, folded his hands, and waited. Sandra came out of the bedroom and nearly walked into the sitting room before she saw him there. She saw his face. She understood immediately. "Who told you?" she said. "Mama Titi." "Mama Titi does not have your number. She told the market told the village told my office told Chukudera called me at a petrol station." Sandra walked in slowly and sat across from him. She looked at his face. That careful stillness she had learned over 14 months meant he had feelings he was organizing before releasing. "I was going to tell you tonight," she said, "with the candle and the pounded yam. I bought it specifically." He exhaled slowly. Then he said, "I am going to go and speak to that fish woman, Emeka. I am not going to shout. I just want to know how. That is all. 20 years this village has been asking and nobody has gone to ask her directly. Today I will ask." Sandra knew that look, that voice. There was a locked quality to Emeka when he had made up his mind, like a door that had been shut and bolted. You could knock all you liked. "Eat first," she said. He ate pounded yam with egusi. She had started it already, and the ofe onugbu would take too long. He finished without complaint, drank a cup of water, stood up and drove back to the market. Emeka walking into Ndiagu market in the afternoon was not a small thing. He was the kind of man that spaces rearranged themselves around, not because he was loud, he was not, but the straightness of his back and the measured pace of his step communicated authority without announcing it. Sellers sat upright, children slowed down. He was walking toward Mama Titi. The word traveled 80 seconds ahead of him. By the time he turned the corner at the tomato sellers, Mama Titi's end of the market had somehow become much more populated. Women who had not needed anything from that section suddenly needed things from that section. The pepper sorting women were sorting with unusual dedication. 2 men looking at dried fish had rotated their bodies 45 degrees toward Mama Titi's store without appearing to notice. Mama Titi saw him coming from far away. She did not flinch. She did not shift. She simply sat, found her newspaper, and watched him approach with the patience of a woman who had been expecting this visit since 7 in the morning. He walked up to her store. "Principal," he greeted, "you want catfish? Good batch today." "I don't want fish." "Croaker, stockfish." "Mama Titi." She stopped. He picked up the spare customer stool, placed it directly in front of her, and sat down. He folded his hands and looked at her with the steady eyes of a man who had interrogated many students and knew the first thing you did was establish that you were not moving.
"I want to know how you do it," he said. She tilted her head. That same tilt, that same squint. But this time she was looking at him. "How I do what?" "My wife came to buy fish this morning. She had told nobody, not her mother, not her sister, although apparently the sister lasted 40 minutes, but that is a separate matter. And by lunchtime, the information had traveled from your stall to my colleague's mouth. So I am asking you, how do you always know?" Mama Titi looked at him the way you look at someone when you are deciding not how to answer, but how much of the answer they are ready to receive. Around them, the market went completely quiet. The pepper women stopped sorting. The dried fish men stopped pretending. 3 more women had appeared from somewhere and were standing at what they believed was a discreet distance. Mama Titi looked at all of them, shook her head with slow amusement. Then she set down her newspaper, straightened her back, and folded her hands. "Principal, you think it is magic. I did not say that. You thought it. The whole village thinks it." She paused. "Let me ask you something first. How long have you been a principal? 14 years. In those 14 years, can you look at a student and know, just from their face and their walking, whether they studied for a test or not? Emeka opened his mouth, closed it. That is different. Answer the question. A short pause. Yes, usually. How? Experience. You learn to read them. The ones who studied walk with confidence. The ones who didn't, they overcompensate. Something is slightly off. Mama Titi opened her hand slowly. There it is, she said. 22 years, she said. I have sat in this stall for 22 years. I have sold fish to this village's mothers, their daughters, and those daughters' daughters. I know these women the way you know your students. I know how they walk when they are fined. I know how they look when something has changed. She leaned forward. But that is not the only thing. Fish has a smell, a strong smell. Most people, when they approach my stall, their body reacts before their manners do. Just a small tightening here. She touched the side of her nose. A slight wrinkle. Even regular customers react when the batch is particularly fresh. The body is faster than the decision. She paused, and her voice dropped. But a pregnant woman, especially in the early weeks, her sense of smell is not normal. Everything is amplified. Smells she loved before become unbearable overnight. And when a woman like that comes to my store, which always smells very strongly, her face does something no other face does. It is not disgust. It is not always nausea. It is more like being overwhelmed by something she was not expecting. Her breathing changes, her eyes shift for just one moment before she recovers and composes herself. But I have already seen the moment before the composing. I have been watching that moment for 22 years. Complete silence in the market. Emeka said nothing for a long time. Then, quietly, "And my wife, this morning?" Mama Titi said simply, "Your wife stepped back, half a step, without knowing she stepped back. Her feet moved before her mind gave any instruction. Her eyes went left for 1 second, that sideways look the overwhelmed eye makes when it needs a moment. Then she recovered completely, but the half step was already done. I had already seen." Around them, several women had tears forming. Whether from emotion or from the effort of not blinking while paying maximum attention, it was difficult to say. Emeka said, "So that is the whole thing. 20 years. The whole village convinced it is something supernatural, and it is just watching, paying attention." Mama Titi said, "There is no just about it, Principal. Most people look at the people around them every day and see nothing. They are too busy with their own affairs. I have had 22 years of practice looking at nothing except people. When that is all you do, you begin to see things that others never sit still long enough to find." He was quiet, thinking. Then, the water. Morning water, not cold water. Where did that come from? Mama Titi smiled, a slow, genuine smile. "I am not always certain. I am usually very sure. But I have been wrong before. Not often, but it has happened. Grief looks similar. Stress, illness. So I never announce. I never point. I never say, 'You are pregnant, come and tell me the month.' That is not my place." She shook her head. "What I do when I am almost certain is say something small, something that means nothing to a woman who is not pregnant and means everything to a woman who is. Morning water, not cold water. It is care. It is me saying, 'I have seen you. Take care of yourself.' If I am right, she will understand. If I am wrong, I am just an old woman giving health advice in the dry season. I don't mind being thought of that way." Emeka looked at her steadily. "And your wife this morning?" And if she had a plan, a candle, a good pot of soup, she had organized exactly how to tell her husband, and your hint causes the secret to escape before she was ready?
Mama Titi met his eyes. "You have a healthy pregnancy coming into your house. Your wife is fine. Your child is fine. You found out a few hours before the plan. You are sitting here in front of me, which means you drove yourself here and did not fall off any road. Is that the problem you are placing before me today, that the news arrived early?" Emeka opened his mouth, closed it. He was a man who respected a well-placed argument. He had built his career on recognizing one. He recognized one now. He reached into his pocket, brought out 500 naira, set it on the tray. "1 catfish," he said. "Medium." Mama Titi selected it with the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had conducted herself well, wrapped it in 2 layers of newspaper, handed it across with both hands, the way you give something to a person you respect. As Emeka stood to leave, she said, "Principal." He turned. "Congratulations. Take care of your wife. Make sure she drinks morning water." A pause. "Cold water is fine for you. You are not the one carrying anything." The market detonated. Women laughing with their whole bodies. Men no longer pretending to be anywhere else, just standing and laughing openly. Someone clapped. A tomato seller knocked over her basket and did not move to catch it. Emeka walked out with the carefully maintained dignity of a secondary school principal who had just been thoroughly and publicly finished by a 61-year-old fish seller in front of 40 witnesses, and who privately felt he had received good value from the exchange. The story of Emeka and Mama Titi became Ndiagu property by sunset, told at the borehole, told in the compounds, told in the barber shop by 4 men who were not present, but told it with the authority of eyewitnesses. And what surprised people was this. Knowing the explanation did not make them less afraid of Mama Titi, it made them more afraid. Because before, you could comfort yourself that it was something supernatural, something beyond ordinary reach. But now you knew it was just watching, just a pair of eyes that had been opened steadily and carefully for longer than most people stayed committed to anything. Which meant she was watching right now. Which meant the next time you walked past her stall, even if you were only passing, even if you had no news, even if you were completely certain there was nothing to detect, you would think about what your face was doing, you would wonder what your feet were doing, you would think about your nose and whether it had done something just now without your permission. Mrs. Okafor went home and stood in her kitchen for a long time, trying to remember her last 3 visits to the market. She was 44, her youngest child was already in secondary school, and she was almost entirely certain there was nothing to detect. Almost entirely. She drank morning water that night, just in case. Sandra had her quiet dinner with Emeka that night. The candle was lit, the pounded yam was done. He told her everything. The smell sensitivity, the half step, the 22 years of sitting still and watching. Sandra listened with wide eyes. So, it was never juju? Never juju. All these years, the whole village adjusting their schedules, wearing oversized clothing, covering their faces. All of it, Emeka said. The woman was just watching. Sandra shook her head. The candle moved between them. "I think she is still a mystery," she said quietly. "Knowing the method does not remove the mystery, it just changes its shape." Emeka nodded once, the nod of a man who found that true. "She told me to take care of you, and she said cold water was fine for me because I was not carrying anything." Sandra laughed. Did the whole market hear that? The whole market, the tomato sellers, some people who I believe were not even shopping. She laughed again. The candlelight was warm between them. When their daughter arrived 7.5 months later, loud, round and healthy, they named her Chisom. It means God is with me on this journey. When the news reached the market, Mama Titi smiled to herself. She selected the 3 best catfish from her tray, wrapped them carefully and sent them with a small girl to Sandra's compound with a message. For the mother, morning water only. Cold water can wait. She had known since Tuesday. She always knew.
We've come to the end of the story, my people. And Mama Titi is still sitting in that market right now, fanning herself and watching. Press that like button before Mama Titi notices you watching without clicking anything. See you in our next story. Bye!